culture shock is something that I think we can all relate to, no matter if you taught in China or Korea or Thailand. Just kind of the shock of getting somewhere new and then going back to your home. And I was lucky enough to sit down in a quick interview session with Brandon Ferdig, author of Life Learned Abroad, on his experience with culture shock, both when he's from a small town in America, from his home to Zhuhai, which is in southern China, and then how he felt when he left and went back home. And some of the stuff we talk about, or some of the stuff he mentions, is stuff that I've certainly felt, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. So I think it's a really good firsthand account of what it's like to kind of arrive and leave China from a culture shock standpoint. Enjoy. Obviously, you're not in China anymore. And I'd like to know, I guess the big question that so many ESL teachers, or I guess expats in China struggle with is, what is it like coming back home after time in China or time abroad? What are some big culture shocks?
I'm a small town guy, and I lived in a city in China, Zhuhai, which isn't the largest city in China, but it's still in a very populated region of the country. And of course, as a city in China, there's a lot of, it's very densely populated with apartments. And I was in the thick of it, right in the heart of the old city. And so when I got back, I stayed with my brother in a city of about 10,000 outside of the Twin Cities, a ways outside the Twin Cities. So you're talking farmland, you're talking like 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-story houses that everyone has, and they're fairly cheap comparatively to either city houses or especially houses in China. So he's a teacher. His wife's a waitress, and they had a nice home in this community outside of a large city in the U.S. And it was spacious and quiet, right? So that was a shock to me. And the next day, I go to I don't know if it was the next day, but it was in the upcoming days, and I went to the downtown of it's Buffalo, Minnesota, and there's 2 old guys playing chess, which actually wouldn't be so unlike seeing 2 old guys playing a board game in the city I was at, maybe cards or something. But I guess just because suddenly, no one's Chinese and no one's speaking Chinese, and it is quieter in this smaller town especially. So it was that kind of quiet, like there's, where's all the noise? Where's all the activity? That really stuck out for me. But being a lifelong Minnesotan, it wasn't uncomfortable. I know some people return home and they're uncomfortable. I didn't have discomfort. I was comfortable. It was very novel, and because suddenly it's like something brand new again. Even though it's where I've lived most of my life, at least in the state of Minnesota. So it's definitely a shock, but not one that was uncomfortable, I guess is the short answer.
Okay. Would you say was the reverse, the opposite true when you came from the States to Zhuhai? Were you kind of, I don't know, was the biggest thing that stood out the noise and kind of the busyness of the city?
Yeah, but it wasn't, in fact, I wrote a book about my time in China, and one of the very first impressions I had that I mentioned right away in like my first chapter of the book are some of these, you see the good and the bad, right? I mean, one could say it's loud and hectic, but I also found it to be very festive. Like I'm walking down the street in my neighborhood, again, this old part of the city of Zhuhai, and people are out and about. I couldn't understand them, but I got the feeling they were saying, "Good morning, Jim. Hi, Beth." I felt like that kind of it sort of felt like a small town, only it was a large city in China. Everyone it felt like everyone knew each other. They would like yell across the street to each other. The kids were out on the street playing, or at least out on the sidewalk playing. And it reminded me of what a street festival or a county fair or when there's an occasion to celebrate in the U.S. That's how it felt there, only there was no occasion. It was just a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
And that struck me as being a pleasant surprise. You know, I saw things like people throwing wrappers on the sidewalk, and I smelled fish that was like being thrown out, and you know, so there were some things that turned me off, but the social energy I found very attractive, even though I
Yeah.
couldn't really participate in it, but I thought it was very nice.
It's nice, the communal. I mean, so I grew up,
Hmm.
I'm American. I grew up in the suburbs down in the South outside of Atlanta. And you see the same people kind of in
Hmm.
passing, but it's not as confined an area. So it's limited. Whereas in China, where I step outside my door in Shenzhen, I run into kind of the
Hmm.
same people. And
Hmm.
it's very, very communal with, yeah, saying good morning. You
Hmm.
see the same people. It's, yeah, it's nice. It's an easy, not easy. It seems friendly. It seems familiar.
Yeah, and I'm in Minneapolis, and if I were to walk down the sidewalk and say hello to a stranger, it would be a little uncomfortable. And maybe there's some of that Minnesota passive aggressive stereotype
Yeah,
acting up in there. But you know, maybe in the South it's different, where they say Southern hospitality is a more common thing.
yeah,
But at least in Minneapolis, if I'm walking down the sidewalk and a perfect stranger is walking toward me, and I just say hello, I mean that would be like, whoa, right?
yeah, yeah.
So there's, you know, America has its space, right? We like our space, we like our big cars, we like our houses, and
Hmm.
you know, we stand in line, you know, with like a good 1-2 feet between everybody.
Yeah.
Whereas lines in China, everyone's kind of right up against one another.
We
So
don't have that luxury. Yeah,
yeah, there's that culture of space in the U.S. That's for sure. That
yeah.
you know, seems to hold true.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any videos or interviews in the future.